This shit with Pat Fitzgerald is alarming. He's the fourth most or the fourth longest tenured coach in all of college football. Kirk Ferentz, Mike Gundy. I'm leaving one. I'm leaving one out. Anyway, 17 years or whatever I think he's been there. He played there before that. I mean, so he's literally a Northwestern guy, right? And man, this is tough to hear from him. I don't know of anybody that doesn't like Pat Fitzgerald. Like first of all, it's Northwestern, so you know, take that for whatever you want. It's Northwestern, but you just can't do this kind of stuff today, I guess. I mean, it's not the old day. This stuff used to happen all the time. Look, everything is different. And we can sit around and complain about it, and we can, oh my God, they can't do two-a-days anymore. Oh, the players get water because it's too hot. Well, people were dying. I mean, so yeah, no more two-a-days. No more two-a-days that you have to give the players water when it's hot. But the whole hazing thing, I read as much as I could read on it, as much as I could find on it. And look, clearly a lot of the stuff the players were doing there is wrong and outdated. Now, I know there's a lot of people my age and older especially that are going to say, oh, this is nothing compared to what, the stuff they would do back in my day. Yeah, I know. And you walk to school in the snow, barefooted, uphill both ways and all that. We know that. But the reality is this stuff just can't happen anymore. Again, whether that's right or wrong is really not my point. And I don't think should be the point at all of this story. I think we all know the point we're at in society today. There are just certain things that, well, we did it in my day, that you just can't do it today. And the whole hazing thing is one of those things, whether you're talking about fraternity or sorority hazing, whether you're talking about a football team hazing or any other sport hazing for that matter, just any type of hazing. And look, the reason we got to a point where those sorts of things are no longer allowed is because it got taken to such extremes in too many instances, right? Now, as far as what happened here and what Pat Fitzgerald knew, because that's really what it comes down to, at least for the point of this story, right? And Pat Fitzgerald being fired over this. Did he know what was going on? How much did he know? When did he know? Was he sort of approving it, whether directly or indirectly, right? I'm a dad. I'm trying to put myself, I wouldn't want that kind of stuff happening to my child anywhere, whether you're talking about football hazing or anything else. The whole, making players strip down naked and do a center quarterback exchange in the locker room. Is that going to ruin someone's life? Probably not. But what's we don't need to be doing that. A bunch of guys taking all their clothes off, lining up in a line, and making freshmen run between two lines of naked people like a naked human car wash. What are we doing? This shit is silly. What? Obviously none of that hazing was helping Northwestern on the football field. I mean, they've got 3 losing seasons in the last 4 years. They've only won 4 games total in the last 2 years. They did make the Big Ten title game 3 years ago, but that was 2020, the COVID year. Half the teams in the Big Ten only played like 3 or 4 games. I mean, 2020 was a disaster coast to coast in college football, but I don't think anybody screwed it up worse than the Big Ten. And that's not to take anything away from what Northwestern did in 2020, but other than that, 2020 season where they played 4 or 5 games, 2019, 2021, and 2022 were absolute failures. So nothing, whatever they were doing, hazing or anything else, clearly wasn't helping the football program. And to be honest with you, that's probably got just as much to do with Pat Fitzgerald getting fired as any of this hazing stuff. Again, I'm not condoning the hazing. I don't think that kind of stuff is... It's not even necessarily whether I think it's right or wrong anymore. What it serves no point or purpose. I mean, come on. We have to be past the point as a civilization and a society where we think that a bunch of juniors and seniors standing around making a freshman take his clothes off and wave his tallywhacker around is somehow going to make him a better football player. There's no way we believe that. Come on. So it's just pointless to do. And again, and when you read these articles, it goes into all this stuff in detail, but not just at Northwestern, but at every university on the planet. They have freshman orientations and all sorts of meetings and stuff that you have to go to. There's sports. There's specific ones for athletes at schools. There's specific ones for the football players at schools, including Northwestern. And all of this stuff, they go over all this stuff. There's just no hazing. You just can't do it anymore. And like I said, a lot of what was going on at Northwestern is just sort of typical childish sort of things that are just meant to embarrass somebody, right? And again, I don't want to act like what happened there is the worst thing in the world. There are lots of worse things that have happened to people than what happened to the freshman Northwestern. Did I just say Michigan? If I did, I apologize. I'm talking about Northwestern. It's hard to keep these Big Ten schools straight when it comes to their sex scandals. I mean, you got Penn State. You've got the Ohio State wrestling deal where the coaches knew about all that abuse going on. You've, of course, got Michigan State and their team doctor for the Olympics at Michigan State who just basically assaulted thousands of women. Anyway, don't want to get into all that. Doesn't matter. So if I said Michigan, I apologize, but clearly I'm talking about Northwestern. None of this stuff helps on the football field. It's just meant to embarrass and demean. That's it. And so, again, whether you think it's right or wrong, and I'm sure there's going to be some people that, I ain't got no problem with this hazing. Okay, even if you're one of those people that got no problem with this hazing, do you think it helps them football-wise? If it doesn't, then it should be something that we can all agree we can get rid of, and it won't really matter in the end, right? It's not helping Northwestern become a better football team to force these freshmen to run around naked or slap each other with their ding-a-lings or whatever it is that's going on up there. It's just childish shit that's going on up there. But back to Pat Fitzgerald. This is something else that I'll let you decide if this is right or wrong or indifferent. Would this story be ending up this way? Would we even know about this story if instead of having 3 losing seasons in the last 4 years, Northwestern had 3 appearances in the Big Ten title game in the last 4 years, and let's say 1 Big Ten title, and maybe 1 appearance in a New Year's Six game? What if they'd accomplished all that over the last 4 years, instead of 3 of those 4 years being losing seasons and only winning a total of 4 games in the last 2 years? Would we even know about this story? This kind of reminds me, Auburn boosters are sitting around going, man, I wish we would have thought of this, right? The Auburn people wanted Brian Harsin gone, so they were willing to make things up, it appears, in order to get rid of him. Now, it didn't work, and they kept him for that second year, which was a complete failure, and he's gone now. But it seems to me like there might be some people in and around the Northwestern football program who were ready to move on from Pat Fitzgerald. And I can tell you from experience, the longer that a popular coach remains at a school, the harder, and in some cases nearly impossible, it becomes to get rid of them. I don't know that this is the case at Northwestern. This is just a feeling that I might, that I have of what might have happened here. But there may be some people or a group of some people, whether we're talking boosters or some administration or some people within the athletic department, or maybe even some players on the team that for whatever reason were ready to move on from Pat Fitzgerald. And in the case of Pat Fitzgerald specifically, a guy that played at Northwestern, coached at Northwestern, has now been the head coach at Northwestern for 17 years, it becomes really, really hard to get rid of somebody like that because they've been there so long, because they're so closely tied and connected to the university. It becomes almost impossible to get rid of somebody like that for any football-related reason. Well, here's your non-football related reason, right? And, of course, no buyout. You don't have to pay a coach a buyout when they are fired for cause, which I think, I'll make a whole extra video on that. If you're hired to be a football coach and you suck at being a football coach and you get fired, that's a pretty good cause. These coaches have got it made when it comes to this. Imagine any other job on earth. Let's say you got hired tomorrow by some random car dealership in your town, right? And your number one job as a car salesman at your car dealership is to sell cars. A coach's number one job is to win games. Now, there's a lot of steps that coach has to take along the way to put his team and his program in a good position to win games. But there's a lot of things you have to do as a car salesman, too, in order to put yourself in the best possible position to sell cars. You got to learn about the cars, right? You got to learn about the market that you're in. You have to be able to do a lot of different things there. If you get hired to sell cars, and after 2 years of selling cars on that car dealership, you're averaging, one sale every 2 months, and maybe there's 8 or 10 salesmen at your location, and you're dead last every single month, and they fire you? That's a pretty good cause. What if that car dealership who fired you because you sucked at doing your job, selling cars, then had to pay you like a $10 million buyout or whatever? That's what's happening with some of these coaches. They get hired. They're not any good at their job at all. They get fired, but it's not for cause. It's only because they sucked as a football coach. That is a cause. Anyway, I'm totally off topic here now. I'm going to rant on that, but the whole buyout situation in college football is fascinating to me to begin with. But I've never not liked Pat Fitzgerald. I kind of like these stories in college football. It's nice, I think, to have a few of these stories in college football. Just, sort of kid plays for a school, grad assistant for a school, assistant for a school, becomes head coach, stays there forever. I like having a few of those stories in college football. I can't recall a single time where I ever sat down either on video or anywhere else and went, man, I don't know about Pat Fitzgerald. Like, it's Northwestern, so like, I don't think anybody outside of a handful of diehard Northwestern fans ever really cared, to be honest, what Northwestern's record was from year to year. Just don't. I don't think they did. But apparently somebody did. But yeah, so they fired Pat Fitzgerald. And what's funny is when you read the report, it says, we couldn't really find any hard evidence that Pat Fitzgerald knew all this was going on, but he should have known. So therefore, we're firing him. So they don't even know if he knew or not. Now, I think he probably knew. He probably knew, right? There's some accusations by players that he knew. There's some sort of hand signal that the Northwestern players would give when they were about to perform one of their hazing rituals. And apparently Pat Fitzgerald was seen making that same hand signal at some practices whenever a freshman would make a mistake. In other words, Pat Fitzgerald was signaling to the juniors and seniors through this hand signal, hey, you need to give Shrek this guy is what they called it. You'll have to read the article to see what that means. But anyway, so I don't know. But, messy situation. And look, there's never a good time, I guess, to have to fire your coach. But is there a worse time than now? I don't think there's a worse time than now. You're basically 6-7 weeks from the start of the season at this point. Media days is in a week and a half. Summer camp is basically underway now. Fall practice starts in 2 weeks. And here's the thing, if you're firing Pat Fitzgerald because he either knew what was going on or in your mind should have known what was going on, what about the rest of the coaches? Normally when you have a weird situation like this close to the season, because look, there's no available coaches. Coaches are looking for jobs and changing jobs and moving jobs and all that from like November to February every year. Everybody that, so anyway, how do you fire Pat Fitzgerald because he either knew or should have known, but then keep the rest of the coaching staff? So are they getting rid of the whole coaching staff? I don't know, because normally what you see in these circumstances is the team will promote usually a coordinator, either offensive or defensive, to interim head coach, right? For this 1 year, and then maybe towards the end of the year they open up a coaching search or something. But if they're firing Fitzgerald because they're saying he knew or should have known, then I don't know. I don't know how you keep any of the coaches. Anyway, I had a lot of comments yesterday on my previous video asking me if I knew what I thought about this Pat Fitzgerald thing, and people had asked me on Twitter and stuff like that. So there you go. Uncle Lou's thoughts on Pat Fitzgerald. I'm not going to celebrate him losing his job. I've never heard, like I said, until this story came out, I've never heard anybody on planet Earth utter one bad or negative word about Pat Fitzgerald. So in a sense, I feel bad for him. Now, if he knew all this was going on and didn't do anything about it, or even worse, if he was promoting it, then I do think that's wrong. Like I said, in today's age, in today's time, this kind of behavior, no matter how accepted it was, quote unquote, back in your day, it's just, we all know nowadays that this is just a behavior that can't be tolerated, right? It really doesn't matter whether we agree with it or not, whether we think hazing should or shouldn't be allowed. It really doesn't even, we're so far past that now. This whole hazing thing, really, we sort of dealt with this as a society really 15, 20 years ago. We sort of came to a collective decision that hazing was something that no longer needed to be a part of anything, really. And so to try to say now, well, oh, this is ridiculous. Back in my day, no one can, yeah. Back in your day, Notre Dame was good. I mean, come on, we're talking a long time ago here.